Today's episode of SBJ I Factor is sponsored by Pepsi. Joining us on SBJ I Factor today from Charlotte, North Carolina is Tepper Sports and Entertainment President Tom Glick. Well, welcome to the SBJ I Factor. Really thrilled to have Tom Glick with us, President of Tepper Sports and Entertainment. More than 30 years in the sports business. And Tom, I'm probably not going to do you all justice here, but minor league baseball, New Jersey Nets, NBA Teambo offices, City Football Group, City Football Club, and now Tepper Sports and Entertainment. You've seen a lot. You made our 40 under 40 in the first year. I have your two write-ups right here. 1999 when you were with the Lansing Lugnuts, and in 2000 when you were with the Sacramento River Cats. So welcome. Yeah. Glad you're with us. You've got some great stories. Let's start from the beginning. So you grew up in Boston. You went to Cornell, but talk about your growing up, your early life, and how it influenced you.
Thanks, Abe. Great to be with you. Thank you very much. I did. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, a town called Needham. Oldest of three boys. I'm actually adopted. My two younger brothers are biological to my adoptive parents, and I wouldn't call us a sporting family. And I was the one who was passionate about sports, playing it. I played YBA basketball, probably my favorite. Played soccer, played Little League baseball, skated on ponds, touch football, whatever I could do, followed all the sports. And my brother's less interested, and my mom and dad not particularly, but my dad, he really embraced my passion for it and made time. Some coaching, but I certainly remember countless trips to Fenway Park and Boston Garden. My dad worked in Cambridge downtown, so taking the train into downtown, always on my birthday, and other times going to a Celtics game at the Garden, going to a Red Sox game. Those are huge memories for me. And then I think my dad, in his own way, he was always there, shuttling back and forth to sporting events, and very encouraging of, I think, work ethic and showing up and playing my best on game day. I could always remember hearing him on the sideline encouraging me to be more aggressive. So he was a huge influence, and I had a great time growing up playing youth sports in Needham. We moved to Colorado for high school in the middle of high school, my sophomore year, and I continued with soccer for a year, and then I wasn't invited to continue, which happens to all of us at some point. Sure, so that happened to me after sophomore year. Basketball I continued straight through my senior year, and then finished my basketball career there, and then picked up rowing as a university student later on.
Did you ever think growing up that you would make sports your vocation?
I didn't understand that there were careers in sport, and in fact I enrolled at Cornell as an engineering student, not because I thought engineering was what I wanted to do, but that's the school I had applied to. My dad was an electrical engineer. I had done good enough on the math SAT, and I learned very early on that I loved school there, but I didn't have a passion nor the gears to be an engineer. That summer I had kind of a crisis of so what do I do now? And my mom and dad helped me to find a family friend. He was actually someone I didn't know yet, but he was the father of one of my classmates, and he worked for the U.S. Skiing Association. He was in charge of the competitions in the Rocky Mountain area, and he took me to lunch as an 18-year-old, just finished my freshman year, and he opened my eyes to all the different careers at that point. This was back in 1987 that existed in sport. He said, look, there's more there than you think. You can study whatever you want. You can stay in engineering. You can study English, philosophy, whatever you want to do, but you're going to have to get your foot in the door and start working. And that turned out to be good advice. I became a government major, history minor. Yep. I started working in the sports information office. Smart. Covering different sports, from track and field to 150-pound football to women's ice hockey, you name it. I worked in the athletic department as well, and then I caught on between my junior and senior year with my first internship in minor league baseball, and that's when I caught the bug.
So a couple of things there. One is, learn from people about about the opportunities. I tell young people all the time, there's always a who you know in sports, and your who you know was a family friend, and they told you about the opportunities in sports. The other part I love about your story is you are the quintessential starting internships in minor league baseball. I mean, just grinding through it, right?
Yeah. I think it was a great place to start, and there are so many different paths. We have colleagues, throughout the industry who have their own story of how they did it. I'm really grateful because, in places like Jamestown, New York, where I worked for the Expos, I was one of 3 members of staff doing everything. The Pirates organization in Welland, Ontario. These are both short-season single-A teams. Huntington, West Virginia for the Cubs. I moved down. I was 23 into rookie ball. I had a big title as general manager. I was in charge of a staff of 5, but I was also in charge of the P&L and not losing money and running everything for 5 owners who lived in New York. And you do everything there, from the lease to selling the tickets and operating the concession stand to cutting the grass, all of the sales, all the operations. It was all on us, and it was a real good way to learn everything that goes into operating a team, which is really the same as the larger teams. You just have to move the decimal point over and the stage gets a little bit bigger. But I learned to work hard. I also learned the things that excited me the most, but also to appreciate and respect what goes into the other jobs that perhaps weren't my passion point, and how decisions can impact those particular departments. So really valuable experience at a very young age.
So elaborate on that, because your quote that I read earlier was you found out at that time at Jamestown that you were curious and passionate about the business of sports, and you learned what made a high performance organization. But there are parts of the organization, like you said, that you really didn't understand or maybe not get engaged in. What part of the organizations were those, and how did you get up to speed?
Well, I think that I did a lot of liaising with the Montreal Expos organization in Jamestown, all the player personnel, things to take care of there. The same with the Pirates in Welland, the same with the Cubs in Huntington, West Virginia. We operated our own stadium. The whole financial side, and these are parts I would say I have always tended to gravitate towards. Building the business, growing the business, sales, marketing, and the strategic moves to build something and build an organization. And so I know that I've always required a great running mate as a CFO now, as a COO running operations, as well as on the sporting side. And there are lots of us who are attracted to working in football operations.
Right.
I want to be a general manager.
Right.
I want to be in scouting. Same in baseball and soccer. And that for me wasn't how I got in. It's definitely not my skill set. And but I certainly understand what it takes to do that job well, and how decisions that I might make or others involved in the business part of the organization, how those things can really harmonize well with the sporting side.
So you're young, you're in your mid-20s probably at this time. Who are some early influencers on you?
I think that the whole minor league baseball period was an early influence. When I made the move to Lansing, Michigan, I had a chance to work for a husband and wife duo named Tom Dixon and Sherry Myers. These are extraordinary executives, and extraordinary sellers and marketers, and so they were the co-owners. I was their general manager, and I couldn't have imagined a better set of mentors, an upline for me, but also a situation. We were building a brand new ballpark in downtown Lansing, Michigan, bringing this team there, and just the approach that they took to running this single-A baseball club was revolutionary to me, and the confidence and the conviction with which they did it. We pursued a lot of strategies that others said we were crazy to do. I ate it up. I was a 26-year-old and just a sponge.
That's great,
and we did some remarkable things. So Tom and Sherry were real big influences on me, and I would say then, from there, I moved to Sacramento, and I did another new ballpark and another startup, and at that point I was just hungry to do another new stadium build. I had an owner there, and Art Savage, the late Art Savage, who was more financially and operationally driven, and so he was looking to me to be the key person as it related to revenue, sales, marketing, and building that way. And so that was another great experience. But after four years of that, I met a guy named Scott O'Neill, who you know very well, and Scott convinced me to leave minor league baseball and make a move to the National Basketball Association, and this was a huge influence for me to really be able to test myself, get a window into 30 NBA teams, all of the WNBA teams, the D League as it was called at that point, and not only to learn from Scott and so many other leaders in the league and at the teams, but also from then Commissioner David Stern and now Commissioner Adam Silver. So this was a huge influence for me, and I think for me it validated a bit that the things that I learned over 14 years in minor league baseball actually were applicable. The pace was increased, the standard was increased, and I learned to work at that pace and at that standard, and that was a great time for me.
So those early 30s probably, right? Because I know that you were 31 in Sacramento.
I was. So I would have been maybe 33 when I moved to the NBA.
Moved to the NBA in their Teambo division or whatever it was called at that time.
Yeah.
Would you say that any one of those up until that point of your life that, Tom, a big career risk taken? Were any of these considered risk in your mind? Or what was the biggest career risk?
Well, I would say that up to that point, there were people who told me that going to Lansing for a title. I actually had done a year in hockey, and I was the business manager of this hockey team, and I initially took a title of assistant general manager with Lansing, and then quickly became the general manager. But there were those in the industry who said, "Well, how could you take a move where you're going down in title?"
Right.
And in fact, when I left Sacramento, where I was a senior vice president, to go to the NBA, Scott said, "All I can offer you is a senior director title to come in." So in both cases, I just viewed that the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to develop was the most important thing, and not so much the title. But I don't know if I would say that those were the two biggest risks. The biggest risk would probably be a few years later when I went over to the UK and became the chief executive of a club called Derby County. And I think that was probably the biggest risk personally and professionally at the time.
Why?
Well, first off, it was a completely different sport in a completely different country. It was a job where I was now over the top of, despite what I just said a few minutes ago, over the top of soccer operations. So buying and selling players, managing a general manager, managing a head coach and scouting director. And just into a completely foreign environment, and I'm certainly glad I did it. I would also say this is probably my biggest failure, but I had a lot of great lessons from it. I spent 4 years there. I think that this is a team that had great investors like Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, Bill Luby of Seaport Capital, Jeff Mallett, who's a co-owner of both the Vancouver Major League Soccer team and the San Francisco Giants. But what we didn't do, we didn't get our due diligence right. So I learned the value of due diligence. This is a league over there in England that doesn't operate with a salary cap, has in many cases really passionate fans, some with moderate and some with very high expectations. In the case of Derby, this is a club with a huge fan base, and any given year, even if it's playing in the second division, which we were, would be the 10th, 11th, 12th biggest draw in the entire country. So big crowds, had won the league a couple of times back in the 70s, and wanted its owners to have an ambition. So we were squeezed by the fans of the club to invest and to win, which is right. This is exactly what fans should do. And even though we were able to grow revenues and grow the business, the cost to compete in that league, where all 24 teams are all pushing very hard to get a promotion spot to the Premier League, and of course there are only 3 spots in any given year. It was a time where we lost money. I learned to think like an owner. Personally lost money. Had to make capital calls, and And so those are hard lessons to learn, but it was great to be able to learn those and have those as experience, and it was also a great professional adventure in terms of learning that sport, learning it in another country. I was able to serve on the Football League board, the Football Association board, and these were great experiences, and ultimately led me to Manchester City later on.
Right. To think about that, if you had done your due diligence, would you have still taken the position?
Well, I might have. In hindsight, I might have, because it turned out to be a very positive experience. You know, would I and would the others have invested money? Maybe not. Maybe not. Or we might have done it on different terms, or we might have done it with a different club. And so it really showed the value of, you know, thorough understanding of the business that you're investing in and getting in, and the environment and the things that you can and can't control. And in that case, with all the things that are great about that league, there are also variables outside of your control, which are risk factors.
I do want to get back to that because, Tom, you've worked with some interesting people. The late David Stern, you mentioned Adam Silver, Ferran at City Football Group, now with David Tepper. I do want to get your learnings and what you've gleaned from watching them lead as we get to this. But let's transition to leadership style and your management style. What's it like? How has it changed?
So I think I've always been an optimist, and I've always enjoyed building things, and I think these things probably inform my leadership style, and always have for a while. I tend to like to work on a strategy, get others involved in working on that strategy, carve out a vision, inspire a team to accomplish something over a long haul, whether it's getting something built or moving up the league tables, or something that we might do in the community, or something that we might do for fans, or something that we might do with partners. So you know, positive, inspiring, sharing recognition with other people would be a way to characterize, you know, how I lead. I think over time I've changed from being very project focused to being more focused on getting people to work well together. And I learned from Scott O'Neill early on the value of hiring great people. I think that group that we had in the 2 years that I was there at Teambo, the account managers and that team, we had some amazing people there. And
who else was there at that time?
Oh gosh, we had Chris Granger there at the time. We had Amy Brooks there at the time. We had Dan Reed was there at the time. So we had some terrific people. Bill Sutton, Chris Heck, Donna Daniels, all there at that time. You know, and Scott was able to attract and keep and get a group like that working well together. You know, all very capable people, in many cases strong personalities. And so I think I've pivoted towards working on that team, you know, helping to keep that team working in a harmonized way, in an integrated way, finding shared purpose, finding shared goals, and I've made that adjustment where I think early on in my career I was quite project focused, and instead of also working on the culture and the way a team comes together and forms.
And I know leaders always want to continue to evolve and get better. What do you still need to improve at?
Well, I think I would say always trying to find the right balance of delegating and giving people good direction and letting them run and go and run and do it, but also making sure not just to be accessible, but being on top of it just in case. And the riskier the project, the more important it is to stay close to it and make sure that I'm checking in, with that leader and with that team to make sure that things are going well. So that I think it's getting that right balance of when to come back in, when to come in over the top if necessary, but not too often.
Right.
And so this is a constant balance.
We talk about traits you see in successful leaders or leaders you admire, and maybe the most effective attribute or quality of effective leadership in your mind. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that great leaders that I think of are they are great communicators. They can simplify things. They can inspire and motivate people to not only to work, but work together and work towards a shared purpose. I think great leaders are also ones who are really high energy or can recharge quickly. I think that there is really no substitute for hard work. I think that great leaders probably have a really good work ethic and are able to quietly sometimes in the background just stay on top of everything and whether it's doing that extra little bit of homework or reading or whatever is needed. And I think also especially as you get into general management, the ability to focus, be present, compartmentalize other things that don't have to do with the meeting that you're in or the subject that you're on. If something bad has happened, being able to switch that off and to focus on whatever comes next. I think that quality I think is really important, because not everything goes well, and there are a lot of things that fit into a day, and being present and being able to address whatever is next in front of you is, I think, another quality that good leaders have.
It's been about 13 months since we lost David Stern. Since you worked with him briefly, an attribute that you admired about him or a lesson that you learned from him?
So many great things about David. A lesson that I learned was just really being able to, when something important came up, to be able to address it in an open, honest way. We had that fight between the Pistons and the Pacers, and it was a huge moment. And I think a lot of leaders might have struggled in terms of what to do and how to respond. And David David knew the right thing to do and was right out there in front immediately, whether anybody agreed or everybody agreed or not. He was always quick to have conviction and to take action. And I'm just grateful to have the time with him. I think one of the moments I remember with David the most was actually my very first meeting with David, just after Scott had hired me for Teambo. And this was in David's conference room just off of the side of his office there at the corner of Fifth Avenue and 52nd Street, and 51st Street. And so he came in, I was already in the room, and he came in through kind of a side door and surprised me. I didn't know there was a side door through to his office. And, his opening line was something along the lines of, Tom Glick, what the,
I'm sure.
Blank is a guy from minor league baseball going to teach an NBA team president. And just straight in. And as I recall, my answer was David, I would bet that the last two minor league teams that I've been running are better run than half of your teams.
Boom! I like it. I like it.
Which was just a lucky answer, but accurate in terms of how I felt. But
I'm sure he appreciated that.
That was an early part of what was a very memorable meeting, and I'm just grateful to have been able to work with him for a couple of years and to have stayed in touch with him for years after.
And now you work for someone who I probably get asked about the most, David Tepper. Briefly, what's his leadership style? What have you gleaned from him?
So David is very straightforward. He would be the first to tell you that he doesn't have all the answers, and he would say he never underestimates his own stupidity. I'm paraphrasing, but so I think that David really comes at it from wanting to work and listen and learn and figure things out, and not expect that he's going to get everything right the first time, but tinker and to make changes quickly. So learn and adapt, and I think that describes how we're operating the team. He's also not afraid to make big bold moves, and so we. I think we're very lucky right now to have him as a sole investor. So our governance is with David, and that enables us to make decisions and do things quickly. And I think that's by design. He wants to be able to do this, make a big difference. He's competitive. He said it's one of the great things you can do in life. He wants to make a difference in the community. He wants to make a difference in the region, and I think do things rapidly if they make sense, and if we make a mistake, to make a change. And I think this describes David's style, which is great. If we want to do something, we do it. And over the last 2.5 years, we've started and begun a lot of things. We have big plans for the next few years, and I'm really enjoying working with him.
It's one of the most bold and ambitious organizations, I think, in all of sport. Let's do some quick hitters, touching on a number of different things. I know you get this question a lot, but the best career advice you've either received or that you offer now to young people?
Well, I tell people a few things. It goes back to this advice that I got after my freshman year in college, which is, just get started. Especially for somebody who's not yet in it, if you're a college student, just get started. I always encourage people to be willing to relocate. I think it opens up a lot more possibilities for people. So if you, and in my case, Maria, has been willing to relocate along with me and our family. But setting those two things aside, I really think it's the upline that you get yourself into. So, for me, David Tepper, Ferran Soriano, David Stern, Scott O'Neill, Tom Dixon, Sherry Myers, it's finding individuals and organizations and projects where you can learn and develop. And I think this is the most important thing you can do at any point in your career, whether you're 20 or 30, 40 or 50.
And there's some people who are always looking for that next job. How do you convince them to stay focused on their current job rather than always looking to the next one?
Well, I think you can just give them that advice, and the insight that I share is that I think in every situation, the opportunity that I moved next to was one that I was approached with rather than that I was chasing. And so there's the most important thing you can do is to focus and perform in the job that you're doing. It's incredibly important to build relationships inside and outside of your organization, to keep them and to cultivate them, and within moderation to communicate the things that you're doing. Too much self-promotion is a bad thing, and it takes you away from the work that you have in front of you. So it's balancing keeping your head down and getting the work done and communicating externally. But I think if you do all those things, that next great opportunity will always find you.
Knowing you and your probably 85-plus hour work weeks, how do you get away from it all? What are you reading, watching, binging?
So I'm guilty of not getting away from it enough. I've got a morning exercise routine which helps me recharge. Trying to get a little bit of golf in. I'm learning to fish. I've got a fishing trip in the mountains here in North Carolina coming up. Not good at it. I'm a novice. Reading right now. I'm reading Barack Obama's book, Promised Land. Begun John Eisenberg's book, The League, about the beginnings of the NFL and five of those owners. And so I'm early into both of those, but enjoying them very much. So that's a few of the things I'm doing.
Anything you're watching? Are you a big Netflix or?
We've just finished. Let's see, we've just finished Bridgerton.
Yep.
With my wife. This is one of the things Maria and I like doing. We're now going back and watching Outlander. We've just finished Fleabag recently, so it's just a whole mix.
Well, as we finish, Tom, we just mentioned how ambitious and bold this organization, Tepper Sports and Entertainment, is thinking in the future. So really, what is on your to-do list over the next 12 to 16, 18 months?
We have several things we're doing. We have become a sports and entertainment company. Two sports so far: the Panthers in the NFL, Charlotte Football Club in Major League Soccer. So we're getting ready for our next NFL season. Preparing. I think we know now that we're going to have an NFL season. We're now preparing for what that could look like, depending on the pace of vaccinations and all of those things. So that's a big focus. We're 13 months out from launching our Major League Soccer club, so that's in full build mode. There are stadium renovations that go along with that at Bank of America Stadium. So those things are all keeping us busy. Our live event and music business, we had started ramping up, and then we had to postpone shows in 2020. But those artists are ready to go. So we're continuing to build that. We have this massive campus that we're building on the south side of the metro, which will be anchored by the Panthers' new headquarters and training center.
Massive,
It'll be a big mixed-use development, 240 acres. So lots going on there to get ready for a 2023 opening. And finally have begun master planning for an entertainment district as part of the next phase of Uptown Charlotte. So all of these things have a lot of activity right now, which keeps it very interesting for all of us.
You must like it.
I love it.
Tom Glick was a 40 under 40 honoree, 1999 and 2000. Here we are in 2021, and he's still accomplishing so much in the sports business, a leader in the sports business. So we're proud of this pick, I'll tell you that much. So thanks for joining us on SBJ I Factor, Tom Glick. We'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Abe.
Thanks for joining SBJ I Factor today. Remember to subscribe to SBJ I Factor wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to our future episodes that will hit every 2 weeks.